What is up, YouTube? It's the Mediator, aka Ben. I'm back with another review, and this one specifically is part 2 to the Agent Carter review, the spoilers edition. Warning, if you haven't seen part 1, which is the non-spoiler review and mostly a character study on Peggy Carter herself, you should probably watch that first, and then watch Agent Carter, and then come back to this video. With that being said, let's begin. For the sake of time, I'm not going to really explain the entire episode as a whole, because I want you to watch it yourself, but I'll go over the main plot points, and then go over some things that I found particularly interesting. So for those of you who did watch it and were a little bit confused, Agent Carter is not going to be a 2-hour series every day. This was just a special premiere edition where they showed the first 2 episodes. So for this part of the review, I'm going to talk about the first episode, and then later on move to the second. The first episode begins with a flashback to Captain America, the First Avenger. Specifically the scene where Cap is flying the giant plane that the Red Skull wanted to use to bomb America into the ice, and Peggy is talking to him over the radio. It moves forward to 1946 in New York, where Peggy lives with her roommate. They have a little dialogue, and she goes to work. Peggy's alias job is the phone company. At least, it's the one that she uses to explain to her roommate, because she can't reveal that she's actually an agent of the Strategic Scientific Reserve, also known as the SSR. You can think of it as the proto-SHIELD, because eventually it moves to become SHIELD, but it isn't yet. Now, the SSR has a big case in hunting down a man named Howard Stark. You might remember that name as being the father of Iron Man. This is important because he does something very similar to his son. He's a weapons inventor, so he develops all sorts of crazy ideas, and he later explains that he can't really just not create an idea that he thinks of. He just makes it. That becomes a problem for him, because his weapons are sold on the black market, and the SSR thinks that he is the reason why. And they are now claiming that he is a traitor to the United States government. Peggy is bewildered by this, since she fought alongside him in World War II, and she doesn't believe that he could do anything like this. After spending some time in a diner and talking to her friend, Angie, Peggy later leaves and goes out the back alley when she runs into a man that she doesn't know, even though he knows her. So she tries to get out of the situation, and that is until a car comes. Well, Peggy starts shooting at it, and the car moves out of the way, and the driver rolls down the window and explains that he is Howard Stark. Howard explains that somebody broke into his vault and stole a bunch of different projects that he labels the Bad Babies, designs that are so crazy and so powerful that they can't be put into the wrong hands. He gives Peggy the opportunity to do something better and something way more interesting than just connecting calls, which is something that Peggy explained to Angie. She feels that she doesn't have anything to do anymore now that the men are back from World War II, and so she jumps at the opportunity to help Stark clear his name. To help her in her mission, Stark gives her Edwin Jarvis, his butler, who explains to Peggy his daily schedule as a little thing of dialogue, and Peggy says something to the effect of, yeah, that's not really going to work, and that if he's going to be a better espionage agent, he needs to learn to improvise. Well, anyway, Peggy learns from a man named Daniel Souza that Agent Jack Thompson has followed a lead of a guy named Spider Raymond, who runs a nightclub, and he has something that's called nitramine. At least he has one sample of it. So Peggy goes into disguise to intercept a potential sale of the formula, and after unintentionally taking down Raymond with knockout lipstick, she finds the weapon and manages to take off with it right before the SSR agents come into the room where the weapon was held and realize somebody took it. So she brings it back to her apartment, and she barely manages to defuse the bomb when she's attacked by someone who actually kills her roommate, whose name is Colleen, by the way. And Carter pushes him out a window, and he just barely manages to escape. Something really interesting I wanted to point out on more of the Peggy thing. She is, again, very different because even though she is very tough, she still has feelings. And one of the moments is when she sees that Colleen has died, and she just breaks out into tears and just can't hold on anymore, which was really powerful. And it really humanized Peggy. Plus, it was a really unfortunate situation. Well, something really interesting is that the man who killed Colleen has scars on his neck. This indicates that he once had a voice box, but it's been removed for some reason. After trying to make Carter feel better, Jarvis takes Peggy to go see a man named Dr. Anton Vanko at Stark Industries. Hint, hint, the father of Whiplash. And Vanko explains that the weapon was created by something called Roxxon oil. And Peggy has to find a man who's been mass producing this, and his name is Brannis. Something interesting is that Brannis also had a similar voice box situation, and the way he's able to communicate is an electronic device that he puts on his neck. And he warns Carter of something called Leviathan. He doesn't really explain what it is, but we know from the sounds of it that it can't be that good. Well, Brannis has been driving a milk truck filled with these bombs, and so the bombs are about to explode, and Carter and Jarvis just barely manage to get away, right before a giant implosion. It's really cool. The bomb actually starts going out and then sucks everything in and makes a giant pile of wood and metal and just everything, just in a giant ball. Well, that's pretty much it for the episode, except for one minor scene in which Jarvis talks to Stark over the phone and explains that Peggy is a really awesome choice for whatever it is that they're doing. Well, this shows that Stark is really up to something, and it's a lot bigger than it seems. So this is a really interesting plot point that is going to get people to come back later. Well, that's it for the first episode. Now moving on to the second episode, which is called Bridge and Tunnel. Peggy keeps declining this offer from Angie to become her new neighbor now that she has to find a new place to live. One thing that they bring up a lot in the episode is the Captain America radio show, which goes a little something like this. I am Captain America. I will save the day. Dun 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 dun. And then you have the damsel in distress who's like, "Oh, Captain America, you'll have to come save me. You're a great hero." And then, the typical Red Skull, which I'm not even going to attempt a German accent, but you get the point. Well, Peggy has to follow the lead of the dairy truck, which was filled with the bombs. And she poses as a health inspector, which is hilarious, because she gives all the people who work at this milk company so much crap. And she looks everywhere for it. Well, she can't seem to find anything. That is, until she discovers that one of the trucks has been used for a commute between New York and New Jersey, and the guy who owns the truck is Sheldon McPhee. So the SSR chief, whose name is Roger Dooley, assigns Ray Krzyzewski? I can't say that. So Agent K is tasked with sifting through the remains of the Roxxon oil refinery, which is now that giant ball of whatever. And he works with agents Thompson and Souza, and they go to visit the CEO of Roxxon, Hugh Jones. Hugh Jones references that he has a rivalry between him and Stark, who made the nitramine formula that you might remember, and references Stark's work with something called Vita rays and Vita radiation, which is actually tied in with Captain America and the Project Rebirth. Well, we'll come to that later. The important thing that you need to know about Vita rays right now is that Dooley orders that Agent Thompson and Peggy screen everyone who works at Roxxon for the Vita rays to see if they had anything to do with the job. Well, during that process, Carter recognizes a guy named Miles Van Ert, who actually creates weapons for Brannis. Well, she rats him out, and as he tries to get away, the three main SSR guys are trying to catch him. And Peggy does this really cool thing where she instead takes the stairs, goes down, and runs into a guy with a briefcase. And she says, "Hey, can I borrow that?" Takes the briefcase and trips Van Ert. It's a really cool scene. Well, anyway, Van Ert is arrested and he is brought in for interrogation, which Thompson's translation of interrogation is just punching him in the face repeatedly until he says something. And then Van Ert reveals the name and location of McPhee. Meanwhile, Peggy's already on to McPhee, and she takes down McPhee, who won't cooperate with her, and convinces Brannis, who's also there, to come with her and Jarvis, so they drive the milk truck. But that is until they're attacked by the guy in the green suit, who, I didn't do a great job of explaining this, but is also the first guy with the crazy scars on his neck. There's a giant fight scene between Peggy and the man with the scars on his neck in the green suit, whose name is never revealed, so if there's something shorter, I would have used it by now. And Jarvis also tries to assist by using a shotgun and shooting through the roof, which causes some crazy things to happen. And something really interesting I want to talk about is that this scene is mixed with a fight scene in the radio show, where they're using like different sound effects to simulate Captain America fighting the Red Skull, and they switch between the two scenes and as if they're one, and it's a really cool job, which is another reason why you should watch this show. Well, anyway, Peggy fights the guy, and eventually she, Jarvis, and Brannis jump out of the truck in time just before it goes off a cliff and the nitramine explodes in this huge explosion, which attracts the attention of the three SSR agents who are at McPhee's house. And so they are trying to drive over to the explosion. And Brannis, who tries to communicate something to Peggy, but his communicator is destroyed, he writes a message in the sand, which looks like a deformed heart. It's very weird. Well, Jarvis manages to get Carter to drive away right before then, and the three SSR agents find the man in the green suit's hotel key, and Brannis, who's dead. And they also find something extremely weird. They find a female footprint. They don't know it's Carter's, but they eventually believe that it's the blonde in the nightclub who stole the nitramine in the first place, who, unbeknownst to them, is Carter. Well, anyway, Jarvis stitches up Carter's wounds back at Howard Stark's mansion. It's not his first mansion, but it's like a fun little weekend getaway place. And Peggy is telling Jarvis that she doesn't want anyone to get close to because she's afraid they'll get hurt and it'll be her fault, referring to Colleen's death. Jarvis reminds her that she can't keep everyone safe and she can't hold the world's weight on her shoulders, and she needs help sometimes. So Carter decides in the end that she'll take up Angie's offer, and she moves into a place called the Griffith Hotel, which is like a hotel for young single women. And one rule that they have in place for people who live there is that they have to be back in their rooms by 10. This is something interesting because, knowing Peggy, she's not going to live up to this rule. Well, anyway, Peggy goes back to the SSR and she talks to one of the guys there. And she looks at this picture that they have, which is of the blonde. And she starts freaking out in her mind because she's like, oh gosh, they figured out it's me. But they actually didn't. They don't know who the blonde is. And Peggy gets a little bit of relief. But unbeknownst to her, Agent K comes across the license plate of the car that Stark's butler Jarvis used to drive in the Roxxon refinery, which is going to be important later. Something I didn't mention is that earlier on in the episode, Peggy makes a call to Jarvis and explains that she needs the car to be disposed of because it could have Vita rays on it, which would frame them to be a part of the Roxxon explosion, and that could risk their entire operation. Before I head out, there are just some interesting side notes that I wanted to share with you. One really cool thing that I noticed was the man in the green suit who works for Leviathan has a really interesting way of communicating with his employers. It's kind of like proto-email, and the way it works is that he has a typewriter, which is connected to a wireless device. So he will type a message on the typewriter, and the wireless device moves the keys of the typewriter in the way that the employer is typing. So he gets to see their message, but he doesn't ever have to be in the same room as them. This is really cool. So this will probably mean that Leviathan has very advanced forms of technology which will play into the future. And also something to note was the promo that was shown after Agent Carter Episode 2, in which the Howling Commandos make a return and Howard Stark comes back. Peggy is angry at Stark because she mentions, I thought I could trust you. And knowing the Howling Commandos, something big is happening if they're going to be there. Or at least, I hope it is. I really like the Howling Commandos, and I hope they do something really cool with them on the show. Also, when I mentioned that Vita rays had something to do with Project Rebirth, I meant that they used that to help make the super soldier formula, which was a reason that Peggy had to go into a special division of the SSR building to look at the files for Captain America, which served as an Easter egg for the show. Well, that's pretty much it for my review of episodes 1 and 2 of Agent Carter. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll get better at it and not sound so rambly. Next week I won't have so much to talk about, so it'll be a little bit easier. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Get everyone you know who would be interested in this to watch both the Agent Carter show and this after show. And I will see you guys next week. When the comics come to screens, you know who to call.